Hi, I'm Dane Campbell. Welcome back to Change with Dane. Today, let's talk about change that you want to make in your life to find greater peace, success, or happiness. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I talked about two different kinds of change. One of those kinds of change is things that are happening to or around you or in your environment that you really don't have any control over. And sometimes changes are kind of forced upon you because of things that go on around you that really you don't have a lot of control of. This kind of change can build resilience, and I'm going to talk more specifically about that down the road a little bit. Today I want to talk about change in behaviors that you are making a conscious decision to make different in your life. Sometimes we do things that don't necessarily serve us well, and sometimes we'd like to do things different that would make us be more effective or happier with our life and the things that are going on around us. And a lot of times these kinds of changes can be difficult to make, and a lot of times we make some of these attempts, and the attempts have a tendency to not stick, or we might do a behavior for a week or a couple of weeks or even a month, and we find that we kind of fall back into doing things the old way that we used to do things. And so sometimes that can lead to frustrations for people who are trying to make changes in their life. So I want to talk about some ideas that actually might help you make lasting change when you feel like you need to do something different in your life that could bring you greater peace or happiness. So if you think about the things that we do on a daily basis in terms of habits and developing new things in our lives that might bring us greater peace and success, as developing a new habit, that might help create a different sort of framework to build your change upon. In our lives, we do thousands of small behaviors every single day just to exist. It's what we do. And most of those behaviors, we're not thinking consciously about those things. They're things that we just do sort of in an automatic response, or in an automatic way as part of our daily routine. If you think about one of these activities that most of us do every day, let's say brushing our teeth in the morning, I would venture to say that most of us do not get up and think about picking up the tube of toothpaste, consciously think about unscrewing it, consciously think about getting our toothbrush and putting on the right amount of toothpaste and getting it wet and brushing our teeth up and down a certain number of times that we're counting, and then rinsing and putting the cap back on or not, and putting the tube away and putting our toothbrush away. That whole process for most of us is very fluid, and it really happens without us even thinking about it. Why is that? It's because we have done it so frequently. We have done that activity so many times that it just comes natural to us, and we don't have to consciously think about that process. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. Some people probably count the number of times they brush and which direction and all those kinds of things, but I would say for the most part, most of us do that activity just as an automatic response to needing to brush our teeth. And it's that way with many, many of the things that we do in life on a daily basis. They're just habits that have formed over time as we have learned how to take care of ourselves as humans and do things in a certain way. And really, this serves a very useful purpose. It would be absolutely exhausting to, as an adult, have to think about and make a decision to do every single behavior and activity we have to do to live in life and to get through the day. So this process is something that helps us survive and helps us live. And the process of having habits that are good and healthy are actually beneficial to all of us in daily life. So if we notice one of these habits or behaviors that we need to change, or we need to add a new habit because of our feeling like something we're doing or not doing is unhealthy or could bring us greater peace or satisfaction, then we have to consciously think about the process of building a new habit or making a change. So I just wanted to talk specifically about habits and how we begin to build new ones and make some of those changes in our life. It's going to bring greater peace, going to bring greater happiness. So one of the first things that I want you to think about is where the desire for change comes from. And it's been my experience that if you have that desire to change and it's something that you personally want to do and it's something that's important to you, the likelihood of that change being meaningful and lasting is going to greatly increase. If somebody is telling you that there's something that you need to do different, or there's something that you need to change, that could be true. But if that thing is not something that is important to you, or you don't feel like it's a change that needs to be made, the effectiveness and the motivation to work on that habit change is going to be much lower than if it's something that you feel is important that needs to be changed. So desire and motivation are the first two big factors, two key factors in lasting and effective change in a person's life. When you start the process of change, I would hope that you would put some pretty deep thought into it. Even small changes can be difficult to make if you kind of haven't broken down the steps and really thought about how you're going to make that change. I often tell people that even if the thing that you want to change is the very best thing you could do in the whole wide world for yourself, change is still difficult. Change can still be fraught with challenges, and it's really important that there's been thought and motivation, and the next step being a plan for how to change so that you can increase the likelihood that that change will be long-lasting and will be effective. When I talk about a plan, I want you to think about doing change in very small increments. I'm sure that many of you have heard the joke, how do you eat an elephant? And the response is one bite at a time, right? If you look at the elephant and you think, I got to eat this whole thing, very overwhelming. But if you look at it as a bite at a time, one small step at a time, one small thing to do at a time, it becomes less overwhelming, and you can then focus on that small thing and implement that into your life and then grow from there. And that kind of creates a positive cycle of energy and motivation that can help you make these changes in a lasting and meaningful way. So if you break down the behavior that you want to change into small steps, then those steps are easier to practice and will increase the likelihood of success. And then this is where part of the motivation and desire comes in. You've got to have consistent practice, consistent attention to the behavior or the skill that you're trying to change so that it becomes the new habit. How did you become a successful toothbrusher? Just by doing it day in, day out. And not forgetting to do it, but taking care of that business every single day, sometimes twice a day, sometimes more if you feel like you have bad breath. I don't know. It's the doing it over and over again that makes us successful in creating behaviors and habits. And so if you are breaking things down and have found the behavior, the thing that you want to change, consistently putting energy into that thing and practicing it in the way that you want to accomplish it, and doing that on a daily and sometimes multiple times a day situation, then that will increase the likelihood that the change is going to stick and that change will be meaningful, and it will have a greater likelihood of developing into a habit so that you can find greater peace and happiness. I know that this maybe sounds a little bit complicated, but really what I wanted to do today is just to kind of introduce to you a foundation of a way of looking at change that maybe you haven't thought about before. And that change can be looked at as building a new habit or a new thing that you're going to do on a consistent and daily basis. And those small steps are what's going to increase the likelihood of success. So I'll talk more in coming weeks about maybe how to look at a specific behavior and break it down and give you some ideas of specific things that you can do to practice and make a specific change in a certain area. And then hopefully you can generalize those theories or ideas or skills into other areas of change that you want to make in your life. I'm very passionate about this. I realize that change can be difficult, but I've seen the efforts of hundreds of clients over the past years, and them being able to not only change their thoughts and behaviors, but find a greater sense of peace and happiness with the efforts that they put in to change in their life. So, habits, let's break those things that we want to change down into small steps. Let's plan, let's find the motivation, and then we're going to use consistent action to bring about lasting and meaningful change in our life. And I'll talk more about that process specifically next week. So if you've made it this far, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. And if you liked this video, please give me a like. And I look forward to talking with you next week about change. Take care.